Welcome, everyone, to Checking in the Hospitality and Tourism Podcast. I'm Jeremy Nichols with Gecko Hospitality. I'm a headhunter recruiter in the state of Florida. I focus on hotels, resorts, country clubs, restaurants, pretty much the whole gamut of hospitality. And of course, I'm joined by my good friend, Dr. Peter Ricci. Peter, how are you?
Good. Excellent. And today we're talking food. So who doesn't love it? Food and drink. I'm Peter Ricci. I run the hospitality program at Florida Atlantic University. Go Owls. And I'm excited because my first jobs was in fine dining, catering, banquets, Aramark. I mean, so food's a big part of my life. And it really kind of inspired me when I became a hotel GM to see where food fits in the whole picture of freestanding restaurants versus hotels. And we just have two amazing guests, so I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Today, we're going to be talking about the state of food and beverage, and we want to take a look today about where things stand as we move into 2026. Today, we're going to have an honest conversation about what's working, what's not, what operators and leaders should actually be paying attention to. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation because we're joined by two great leaders who see the industry from two different angles, but at a very high level. You want to bring out our first guest, Peter?
Sure.
Let's bring out Sam. Is Sam there?
There he is.
Hey guys.
Sam. First is Sam Bakhshandehpour, Global CEO of José Andrés Group. Sam is the global organization. Sam leads this global organization that is built on creativity, purpose, and serious operational discipline. And Sam has a clear point of view on operations and how you scale an industry without losing who you are.
That's very nice. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you, guys. Sam. Happy to be here.
Sam, thanks for taking the time to join us. I know you have a very busy schedule. For those listening, can you briefly introduce yourself and share how you think the state of food and beverage is right now from your seat?
Yeah, no, thanks again for having me on. Very relevant topic for all of us. You know, we oversee almost 50 restaurants across 8 markets, fine dining, full service restaurants. And the industry, I would say, looking back over the past, 3 decades, this is one of the most interesting crossroads from a variety of existential points that we are tackling every day. I think on the financial side, there are many challenges which we can get into that are impacting our industry, from the cost of operating to labor shortages, so on and so forth. The consumer behavior shift has been really fascinating. Some of the points, such as consumer behavior shifting from drinking to having more non-alcoholic, wanting more whole food sourcing. There's a lot of earlier dinner times. The 6:00 reservation is the new 7:30. You're seeing some consumer habits that are existential. And then, coupled with, our industry is now facing, how do you incorporate tech? And, how do you make technology as an invisible hospitality beneficiary, as a tool, versus, robot servers, as I joke around saying that's not where the future is headed. But how do you elevate guest experience using tech? How do you incorporate tech to enhancing what is the quintessential non-tech, and that's hospitality?
Wow.
These are some of the things that basically we're in the midst of right now.
You and I met in California at the BLLA conference, and I remember when I got back from the conference, I realized that there was one thing that every panel brought up. We brought it up in our panel, which luckily we were early on, so I don't feel like we were copycats. But the main thing that people were talking about was authenticity.
Yep.
And personalization, and how to use tech, right, without losing that. Did you notice that? Like every single panel, that word authentic came up.
Yeah,
Oh, look.
I hear it everywhere in the university too. Whether it's teaching, whether it's being your personal you, whether it's a hotel, it's the buzzword this year and last. And I think it's accurate because everybody, students tell me, and Sam, your group is perfect for this, is that they want experiences.
Right.
They don't want to go to a birthday party. They don't want to go to a bridal show. They want an experience in everything they do. And so we've become edutainment in the classroom.
Right.
We can't even teach. They want, everything has to be an experience. It has to be connected to them. It has to be this. So imagine you're spending discretionary dollars on eating, then that has to be an experience. Because
Right.
if they want it in a classroom, then they want it definitely when they're on a cruise or at a casino or going to fine dining,
Spot on.
So before I bring out our other guest, I want to let anybody who's watching right now live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, you can go in the comment section and ask any questions. And if you do, we'll bring them live to the screen. And if you're watching this on replay, you can put them in the comments there, and maybe we'll shoot a DM to Sam or Sarah, and maybe they'll answer for you. You never know. Right. Right now, I want to bring out Sarah King, Chief People Officer at Darden. Sarah oversees people strategy from one of the largest and most complex restaurant companies in the country. And she has a front row seat to what is really happening with talent, leadership, culture right now. Sarah, I would love for you to briefly introduce yourself and share your perspective where the state of food and beverage is from a people and leadership standpoint.
I think Sarah's having some sound issue.
Sound.
I'm not sure if you guys can hear me, but
I
I
hear
can
you.
hear you.
You're here. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we hear you perfectly.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Welcome.
We can hear you. Maybe she can't hear us right now.
I have lost all sound. I can't hear any of you. So
Okay. Well, we'll take care of that on the
Jessica,
back
I'm
end.
not sure what's going on there.
No worries. We'll continue to talk to Sarah. We'll continue to talk to Sam. All right, Sam. So while Sarah's taking care of that, I know Jess will take care of that in the back. We want to bring out some questions that we already wanted to ask you, if that's okay.
Please.
All right. So Peter and I came up with these questions, so hopefully they're pretty good. But what do you think are the most innovative things happening in the restaurant industry right now?
Yeah, I'll classify it in a couple of buckets. One is innovation reacting to consumer trends and changes in consumer behavior. And the other will hit back on this technology point. On the consumer behavior front, I think simplicity is definitely leading the way these days. It's simplicity in terms of the experience overall by being that authentic word we talked about, Jeremy. It's making sure you know what the restaurant stands for, the quality of the ingredients, where food is sourced. It's non-alcoholic movement, even for those that are drinking, incorporating more NA cocktails, more NA beverages into the mix. It's a shorter attention span where dining times have been reduced. It's earlier windows of dining. So there's a lot of shift happening where you look at this industry 10 years ago and you look at it today, and it is much, much different in reaction to a generation that prefers to wake up earlier in the morning and do a cold plunge versus staying out late. The experiential point is a huge one, Peter. And, I had literally had a meeting just before this with our entire team at Ritz Nomad. This is the flagship 2.0 of the Ritz-Carlton brand for Marriott. We have 2 bars and 2 restaurants. All the design is unique. All the food and beverage was outsourced. And it was voted the number 1, number 2 hotel in New York City and in the world. And it's known as a food and beverage destination. This is experiential dining. And it's having a meal at Zaytinya where it's Mediterranean, Greek, Turkish, Lebanese, then going to the lobby bar which is a beautiful neighborhood jaunt with a Spanish designer, Lazaro, who takes you away. Going to the rooftop to experience Nubaloo's with the most incredible cocktails and views, and then having the signature restaurant that's Bazaar Meat. These are elements that add to an experience and cross-selling. And that's which leads us to the technology side. Innovation, everyone wants experiential, but how do you deliver it now? How do you elevate the guest experience? And we're rooted in the Spanish culture, authenticity. We stand for culinary excellence. In order to meet this innovation, we're now utilizing going deeper on technology. And it's behind the scenes. So as a guest, the restaurant's an extension of your neighborhood, an extension of your home. And to be in that neighborhood, you want to have an elevated experience. So when Jeremy comes into the restaurant, we know that he's a regular. And as part of, our loyalty program, as part of the entire guest experience, there's information we have that we can then train our staff based on the technology that makes this so seamless to elevating that guest experience and offering Jeremy, oh, we know you're a regular here at Bazaar Meat. Come join us for a cocktail at Nubaloo's. Our chef is prepared. We know you don't drink. Our chef is prepared. Our sommelier has some new wines that are on the menu, and it's a gift for a tasting. That creates loyalty, and that's invisible with the technology. But that's the innovation of how do you now take technology, which exists with platforms that we have at our fingertips, and incorporate it into the guest experience.
Wow.
How fun must that be?
It's a blast. We're living in this crossroads of a revolution with technology. AI is thrown out there loosely, but if you embrace it in the right manner, knowing that we are hospitality, it can really enhance the experience like no other.
Wow.
Hey, Sarah, can you hear us now?
I can. Sorry about
There you
that.
go.
One of the downsides of a big corporate public company is the millions of firewalls you have to get through.
Oh, no worries. No worries. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Well, welcome, Sarah King, the Chief People Officer at Darden. Darden, to me, having lived in Orlando, it's probably the largest or one of the largest restaurant companies that people know of in our society. And what I really love about Darden is that you have so many layers of types of concepts and experiences over the years. And yet you do it on a mass level, which I still don't know how it works. I just can't comprehend it. Like, just off of what Sam said, I'm like, okay, I worked in 2 fine dining restaurants in high school. I could understand 2, but I can't understand his 50 with so many different concepts. And then Sarah, how many units do you have across all the brands, more or less?
About 2,100.
See,
Wow.
I can't get my arms around that.
Wow.
And you are one Chief People Officer that is finding people for all those brands. So,
well, to be clear, it's not me. I have a fantastic team, and that is the trick.
Okay.
You got to make sure you got the right people in the right place.
So, Jeremy, you want to piggyback on some of Sam's content there?
I actually wanted to talk. I could talk forever about what Sam was talking about because I had questions coming off of those questions. But that's like a whole innovation in itself is a whole episode in its own. Even before we went live, I was deeply entrenched in our conversation about beverage.
But innovation to me is so, it's so broad. It's technology, it's menu design, it's decor, it's layout, it's location, and
personalization.
Yeah.
I'm sure that goes into play, Sam, when you are going into different cities, right? When you go from Nashville to Disney Springs to Miami, right? I'm sure your team is looking at that.
You have to localize.
Well, how do you, so throw that same question, innovation at Sarah. I mean, if I'm at a Bahama Breeze, I want my Bahama Breeze to taste exactly as it does in Fort Lauderdale, as it does on I Drive. It's a totally different thing, right? So do you localize, or what are the top innovation things right now in Darden?
Well, let me start by saying, answering the first question, we don't localize very often. When you have 2,100 restaurants across 10 brands, you have to have brand standards. And you have to make sure that those brand standards are adhered to. It's probably similar for a franchise business because we own and operate all of our restaurants. You have to adhere to the brand standards to be able to continue to operate a franchise business in most cases. So every so often we will have a little local nuance in certain parts of the country, but it's pretty rare. Even with our franchise business, which is all of our international business is franchised, even those folks have to follow the brand standards for whichever brand they're franchising from us internationally. So one of the reasons that Darden is successful is because leveraging scale is our greatest competitive advantage. And as Sam will know, once you start to get critical mass, leveraging scale is what helps make this business more profitable. So we have to be pretty strict on how the restaurants are run.
I have a good question for you, Sarah, actually about that. Oh, and thank you. Right here. Is it Maylene? I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. She says, that's great. I'm looking forward to listening to this podcast from the point of view from hospitality management. Hey, student at FAU. There you go, Peter.
Maylene, do you work in a restaurant or have you ever worked in a restaurant? It's very common in the U.S. to have a first job in a restaurant. I'd love to hear if you've worked in a restaurant yourself.
I'm going to bring up that question for Sarah while she's answering yours, Peter, because it goes hand in hand with what we were just speaking about. How does leadership decision-making change once you move from running great restaurants to leading at great scale, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. And quite frankly, that's probably one of the main things that my talent management team spends time on, because it's the biggest transition from going to a single unit to multi-unit. And the reason is because you can't just muscle through it yourself. And, restaurateurs, we're operators at heart. My first job was in a restaurant. I've never not worked in the hospitality industry. And so typically speaking, we're get stuff done people. And then once you start expanding to, move from running great restaurants to running great regions or running great divisions or running great companies, it's not about you muscling through it yourself. It's about your ability to get results through other people. So it all comes back to leadership.
Yeah. Do you feel
whatever it is?
Yeah, I can't even imagine doing that from scale. Like, do you have to have I don't know how to answer this. I mean, ask this. The way you are looking for leaders per concept.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have different standards per concept, or is it just a Darden umbrella?
It's a bit of both. So there's definitely a Darden umbrella in terms of the leadership competencies that we look for. We promote from within more than we go outside. So we have pretty high internal promotion rates. So we have a whole bunch of things that we can do to assess people and test them on the job. In terms of differences in the brands, I mean, all of our brands are very unique and they're all special in their own right. So there's a little bit of, I don't know, I think about it like my kids, right? They've all got different personalities, but they've all got, my values in terms of how we raise them. So, a leader in a yard house, for example, is probably going to be probably going to enjoy somebody that's a little bit more edgy and, that's rock and roll, it's loud music, it's multiple day parts. Versus a leader at Cheddar's, which is a different target guest, versus a Capital Grille, which is, a little bit more upscale. So there's some fundamentals that don't change no matter what brand you're leading at, but there's definitely some personality types of each of our brands that match better to what people are looking for depending on their own personality.
I want to piggyback on that because I think if you're watching this or listening, make sure you look up Darden and José Andrés and you see all the variety of concepts. And I'll throw that same question back to Sam, because when you move up to scale, you're doing so at the very high end with a very specialized cuisine and atmosphere. And it's got to be somewhat different in the planning because you probably have core values across, but you also want very unique experiences. So how do you handle that now that you're up to 50,
No, I think Sarah said it perfectly. You know, we rely on brand standards, but we have the luxury of, you know, despite having 50 units, we're way smaller than Darden, where we have the luxury of being able to localize 20% while we keep the brand standards for 80%. And when you think about, you know, the category we're operating is really luxury fine dining and lifestyle. It's full service and it's lifestyle. So it starts with the North Star of what do you stand for and the intentionality of the brand. And we, again, have the luxury being smaller where the brand stands for something. And it's an unspoken rule that, you know, we have culinary excellence has always been the North Star. So you know that you're part of an organization that's rooted in the most incredible food. And it's also rooted in humanity and the do-good nature of the brand, which is, again, outside of our purview. It's a totally separate organization. And the humanitarian efforts are totally outside of our for-profit restaurant business. But it's understood. Now you have great food and it's rooted in humanity, which means it's really rooted in the essence of hospitality. So now comes, how do you create brand standards, processes, give people a career path, because they already take pride in the brand, right? And I love what you said, Sarah. You have brands that stand for different things, right? So someone going to work for one of your brands versus the other, they're appealing to an ethos that brand has. And we have sub brands, but the first step was the global brand is very solid in what it stands for. Then with our sub brands, we spent a lot of time in training the teams to realize, like, you're not coming here for a transactional occupation. You're coming here with the opportunity to build a career. And localizing brands actually makes things interesting, not just for our teams, but our guests. So, you know, as we go from New York to Nashville, like we're going to do this year, or relaunching Bazaar Meat in Miami later this year at the Andaz from the original Bazaar, the foundation is still Bazaar. It's at 80%. It's rooted, you know, the design, you know, the experience, but there's 20% that'll be new, both for our teammates as well as the local guests who'll be experiencing it, some for the first time, and they can go to 4 different bazaars and have 4 distinct experiences while they still have their classics.
Yeah, Jeremy, before you pull up the next question, I just have to chime in from the seat of an educator, because a lot of people start in a restaurant in their youth and do not think of it as a business or a career. And listening to the both of you, you've just opened this whole world of careers, you know, and I try to do this every day. Get excited about the restaurant industry, because it's marketing, it's technology, it's accounting, it's finance, it's architecture, it's design. And, you know, we go and eat and we just think, okay, you know, I was a server and that's what I did and that's it. But I mean, this business is tremendous, and and people will always eat out. They will always change what the trends are, what they like. And I have a lot of marketing students right now, you know, and they're interested in everything experience and what can I do and what's trending, but then it's going to change. And what are my friends like? And what should I post on TikTok? I mean, I don't know how you keep up with all that. I really do. Right. You know, I can understand it if you're one freestanding place in a hot town, or you're in Vegas, or you're in New York City, or whatever. But this is the future of our world. And this is what attracts younger generations, all about what their friends are into and what experiences are. So I think we have a question to that point. But
we do, but I want to piggyback off that, because you're just talking about growth within the industry. And I wanted to ask both Sam and Sarah, definitely Sarah too, because thousands of locations you have. If you're an employee in good standing, right? Do you support relocation to other restaurants?
Absolutely.
Okay. Because I appreciated that when I was coming up in the industry. Like I worked with I was in retail first when H&M first came to the US from Sweden. I was actually trained over in Germany, and then I was in New York City. And then when I wanted to relocate to Tampa with my wife, I just asked, the corporate team, and I was in good standing, and I was able to relocate to Tampa. So yeah, do you have employees, Sam and Sarah, that ask for relo at all?
We do. We try to promote career mobility, both across geographies as well as different concepts. And with the end goal of, if you're a top performer, you can move up to being a partner as a general manager or head chef and participate in owning your domain. And then ultimately continue working your up to be owning a region and so on and so forth. But there's a real distinct path for that. And it starts with the mobility track.
Yeah,
sure.
so
You're the
same
same.
for us. Yeah, we have, all of our general managers or managing partners, depending on the brand, 100% of them are promoted from within. So they all started somewhere as hourly team members. And in order to get the breadth of experience that they need, the ones that are serious about making a career, that not only do we approve it, but we encourage them to move. And when you move into management, we have a 12-week management training program that we put people through. And you cannot go back to your start a restaurant, right? Because I think most of us know that it's difficult to go from being a peer to being a leader. And so we just have a policy that, if you want to move into management, you have to, when you complete your training, you've got to go to a different location. So I have an entire relocation team, actually.
That's great. I mean, that's something that I don't think we talk about often. Peter and I talk about, growth within the industry, but I think the reload part of it and having that opportunity to travel, and especially when you're younger, right? People are probably more open to that when they're younger. It's just a cool opportunity within our industry that I don't think is open to many others. So I just wanted to bring that up before I brought up another question.
And I got to throw in there, and I'll give shout outs in Boca Raton, Florida. The managing partner of Seasons 52 is purely delightful. And the Capitol Grill managing director in Fort Lauderdale, there's no other like the two of them. I mean, and that is where I go to eat. I know they share in the financial success of the business. And so people watching this, you don't even know that you can become a managing partner working for an employer, which means you share the profitability of the operation. And I have so many students, they don't really know entrepreneurship versus ownership versus working for an employer. What's better? Well, in this case, you have the best of both worlds. And I can tell you that a lot of the managing partners that I know, that's where they'll stay for their career path because they are earning well. They look at improving their year-over-year experiences and revenues, which goes directly partially into their pockets and makes them more effective business leaders. So Sam, the fact that you have managing partner types is very impressive to me because I always loved that Darden had that concept. Again, I look at the world from being in the business so long, but also now from taking young people on a journey, and there's too many options. You don't know what you want to do. And being an influencer or an entrepreneur is what everybody wants to do, but they don't really know what that means. So why not become an influencer entrepreneur working for a large company where you have benefits and you have growth opportunities and you have concept development and you have all this other stuff. So sorry, I get excited about this stuff.
We love it.
I'm going to bring my next question up for Sam. Sam, from a leadership standpoint, what are companies still getting wrong about developing frontline leaders, even after everything the industry has been through since 2020?
Yeah, it's interesting. 2020 really gutted our industry with respect to talent. And it happened on both ends. It happened on the frontline leadership side, but more importantly, it eliminated our bench of talent. So much of this industry was transitional work, and people were hourly with flexible schedules, and they left the industry and they found some other part-time gig, most likely from home, which was a lot easier than serving. So what that did was it put us on our back foot as the industry ramped up. And we have all suffered from this. We call it the shortage of labor. There's constant, every board deck I have, when I present to my board of directors, there's that bullet that says labor is one of my red light challenges. And I guarantee Sarah has it in her deck, and we all suffer from it. So it goes back to this topic of the way we have to solve for it as an industry is not viewing them as labor, is viewing them as partners and striking the emotional chord of you're here, you're part of a team. People love the feeling of belonging. Mm-hmm. Hiring and training is not a one and done. It's something that has to be contiguous while you have a career path for these people. Coming in as partner with the thought of I'm a partner, I'm a teammate, the name on the front of the jerseys, what I play for. And we've invested heavily on the people side, and Sarah can be really the leader. And I'm following really a page out of the Dardens of the world that have had such success. And first, it starts with the leadership and investing in the people who are leading training. And those people, it's interesting, historically was this is the training department. And they're coming in as sharpshooters. And they're coming in to train a restaurant and then they leave. We flip that model on its head. We now actually have a Delta force. We call them the dream team. Of our trainers are actually people within our company that are taken outside of their day job and they go on a special mission to train for the next opening. And again, I'm not opening 2,100 restaurants, which is a lot different than the scale. With 50, we're much more methodical. But now our teammates are excited to be on this dream team. So, wow, that means I'm the best in my domain. And if I'm the best server, I now get to go and share my wisdom and my experience as a top server in the company with the new opening happening in Nashville. And that is the element that, again, a lot of frontline leaders, when it comes to how do you create good future leaders, forget, it starts with the food runner. It starts with the busser. It starts with the dishwasher to make sure that they know, again, if you're a top performer, there is a real plan here that you can go and build a career, and investing in people, investing in ongoing training, sharing the case studies and the examples of the chef who is now heading up IT, as is the case at José Andrés Group, which I still don't understand why he would make the move from cooking food to dealing with technology, but separate topic for another day. But these are the case studies that when you promote these, it really humanizes and makes it palpable. It's like, wow, I could go from being a bartender to a regional manager. Right. I could go from being a pastry chef to the chief culinary officer. And there's a real path. Many of us in this industry, and we've been guilty of it, we're moving so fast that you forget, you're like, it's always about your guest is always right. Well, in order to take care of your guests, you need to take care of your employees and your partners first. You do that on the front end, you'll see that impact on the back end with respect to service and the touch points of hospitality onto our guests.
Sarah, what are your thoughts on that? Because before I have like a billion Peter things as usual, so you go first.
Well, I mean, I can't really add much to that because it was so well articulated. And I think one of the reasons I love the hospitality industry in general is because of the opportunities that it provides, and quite often to people that don't really know what they want to do with their life. I was that person, right? This never used to be a big deal for me to say this until I moved to America, which has a degree of focus on college educations, but college and me did not get along very well. So I do not have a college degree. But this industry, if you work hard, and I have nothing against college degrees because both my kids just graduated and I told them they didn't have a choice, but it was different then, right? But I think the point is because of, I was able to work hard and and build great relationships. And somebody somewhere at different stages of my career saw something in me that I never imagined for myself. And I know you don't get that in every industry. So that is why I'm so passionate about it. Our CEO, he's the CEO of a $13 billion public company, and he started as a busboy at Red Lobster. So there's thousands of stories like that in this industry. And I think one of the opportunities, which is where Peter and I first connected, is how do we tell the stories better? And not just to the young adults, but sometimes it's the parents that don't see it as a great career. And I can tell you right now, success is not always just about financial success, but the success that I've had because of what this industry has given to me is way better than any of my brothers and sisters. And, my parents were like, "You're going to do what?" And so I just get really fired up about that, because our company, we've 200,000 employees. We are littered with success stories because this industry showed people that want to work hard and can build good relationships and be on time and be reliable and, have that sort of hospitality heart, as I call it, that anything is possible. And I just don't know of a better industry than this for that.
Such a cool answer, and it made me come up with another question for you, because I'm proof of the pudding. I mean, I was in hospitality, and I didn't even know what a headhunter or a recruiter was. I was an internal recruiter before I went on my own. But had I not been in the industry, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to learn how to recruit and become an internal recruiter and then a director of talent ac. So my question to Sam and Sarah, right? With Sarah, what position did you come into Darden at, or into the industry at? And same for you, Sam. Just curious.
My first job in the industry, I'm from New Zealand. So this was about 5 continents and 5 decades ago. I was a server. And then I did bartending. I loved being a bartender. I was a great bartender, I'm not going to lie. And then I moved into management against because it's hard to walk away from the tips and all that. But then I started thinking, I don't really want to do this for the rest of my life. And so I sort of moved into restaurant management. And then I accidentally ended up in training. And when I ended up in training, I was like, oh, this is what I like to do.
They asked you to do it. Sarah, you're such a good bartender. Can you just be a trainer?
Well, it wasn't that kind of training. It was actually, at this point, I was living in Australia, and the government was funding private companies to teach hospitality to high school graduates. Because in my part of the world, college is one path. It's not the only path. And so there was a lot of technical programs. And so I trained people how to be servers, how to be bartenders, how to be kitchen hands. And part of how I was measured was to get them into employment. And that's when I started to realize that I loved helping people find their potential. So then the short story from there is somebody that worked for me worked in HR, and I was like, oh, I wonder what HR is. And I applied for 1 million jobs, and I got rejected from all of them because I had no clue what I was doing, but I was very persistent, and eventually I got hired. And that was with Wyndham Hotels and Resorts. And I spent 20 years with them, living all over the world. And then I got headhunted for Darden about 9 years ago and came in here as the chief people officer.
Nice. Sam, I'm curious. I heard your story before, but I on another podcast, but I want you to share whatever you like to share on your journey.
Yeah, my journey is a different path into hospitality. I say, I was a guest bartender in college, which was my first job. And I also was a very good bartender, Sarah, but probably not up to your skills, but loved it. Always loved hospitality. And I actually started my career on Wall Street doing investment banking. But the industry that I specialized in was lodging and ultimately gaming. Because again, I love the industry, and to my old bosses, I love what finance was rooted in. But I actually found myself much more attracted to operations and strategy and how these companies grow and function, and the people side of the hospitality of hotels and casinos, more than I did, frankly, being rooted in the financial side of investment banking. And thus I made the shift. And ended up working for a private equity-backed company that had launched a hotel chain called the SLS, where I met José. And I came in as the president of the parent company. But day one, I remember sitting down with our team. I was like, look, I want to shadow you. And I went to one of the senior members of our team on the food and beverage side. I came in on a Saturday night and I said, look, I'd love to shadow you tonight from the time you open the restaurant to the time you take the trash out. I just want to follow you around and see what happens in these four walls. Because despite growing up in boardrooms and part of CEO, CFO strategy and, M&A and capital, I always have been intrigued and love the people side of this business. And let me see the challenges on a busy Saturday night. And that's exactly what I did in Beverly Hills at the SLS. I shadowed, our GM at the time and walked around the property and, found myself coming into the restaurants and the nightclubs at the time and the hotels much more regularly to follow the operators to get my crash course. And it's funny, Peter, you made a comment about what you can learn inside of a restaurant from an academic lens. It's really an MBA in four walls. And there is no other industry I can think of that if you're bright, you're hardworking, and you have that passion to learn, you look around the four walls of a restaurant, you walk out of there with an MBA.
I just am so happy with you. You just tickle me because, I probably shouldn't say this since I'm an educator, but I started in a family that was on welfare. And the way to my success was working hourly. Nobody had gone to college. I wanted to go to law school. And in the 80s, when you grew up, you needed a college degree to have a career path. I mean, it's the way it was, even into the 90s. Now, what's new is old, what's old is new. And I love that some of my students realize you do not need a formal education. What you need is to find the educational path that you love, whether that's job shadowed from following somebody, whether it's certifications and you're going to do 10 Microsoft certifications, whatever the path is. Now, there's been an issue because cost of education in the US has risen so much and the value has diminished, and the pandemic exploded it. So what do I value my degrees? Absolutely. Did I learn from them? Yes. But I have students right now who will tell me, I want to work 4 days a week at the Hard Rock bartending because I'm pulling in $1,500 a week. And I do not want to schedule. I do not want to deal with employee issues, and I don't want to go into management. And the HR friends are like, I'd really like Sam to go into management. I want Sarah to be the manager. So they're learning that you can do whatever you want.
Right.
And unfortunately, the story does need to be told to parents. I grew up with parents who were do whatever you want to do because neither one of them had gone beyond high school. But when I did a semester at law school and I dropped out to get a degree in recreation and tourism, my dad did say, what is that? Oh, that's what you've been doing all through high school. Okay, I get it. Do whatever you want. But, I always use this example, and I'll go to the next question. But when you have the baby in the delivery room and everybody's fawning, they're like, oh, a firefighter, a lawyer. They're never like, oh, here's my new bartender. Here's my event planner. We need that kind of PR.
Not yet.
Right? We need it. And I always laugh about that joke because I'm like, yeah, I've never been in the delivery. They don't let you visit the babies anymore, but I used to love to go to the window.
Now, okay, Peter, imagine when I had to tell my dad that I'm leaving as a managing director at JP Morgan to go work in a hospitality company. And he paused and said, let me get this straight. You're leaving JP Morgan to go work in a nightclub?
Yeah.
And the disappointment on his face. And I said, no, it's hospitality, and explaining because in that generation, you wore the blue or the white shirt and worked for IBM until you got a gold watch. And that's how you measure success. I love this topic because times are changing so rapidly, in particular with the amount of knowledge. You can become an expert in any field right in front of your phone.
And we're business.
And how you have a front row seat, how academia is evolving. I actually think hospitality can be a beneficiary of this shift in the way academics and traditional pedigree is viewed into translating into a career that, frankly, hospitality is one that is much safer when it comes to being displaced by AI, because that
Absolutely.
people element, hospitality is exact opposite
Yeah.
of what technology is viewed as cold, not personal, and hospitality is the exact opposite. So I love this topic, and this is my way of getting invited back to your next podcast.
It
We go
is.
deeper on the topic.
And I love it because I have finance MBAs that wind up at Carnival Cruise Line and Disney, and they tell me, oh my God, you were so right. These companies are much more fun than if I had gone to work for a financial planner. Or I take my individual financial planners who want to run their own business, and I give them the hospitality service skills, and I tell them, you better be the fastest to respond to your clients, immediately care about them, build a lifelong relationship, and you're going to blow away every other financial planner. That's hospitality.
Love it.
We're just a business. We're just a fun business. So, all right, Jeremy, I'll be quiet now.
Well, we have two C-suite sitting on the call right now, or on the podcast right now. So I'm sure anybody out there who is in hospitality, they want to hear the answer to this question. And it's directed to Sarah, but I want to hear Sam's point of view as well. All right, Sarah, how have you been spotting great internal leadership talent lately? The reason I ask that is because I'm sure there's people in the restaurants that maybe see their colleagues moving up, and they might not know if they can. And what are you looking for, and what are you looking at?
Oh, I'm going to try not to go down a bunch of different rabbit holes on this because it's a complicated answer. So first of all, I think we have a belief here at Darden that in order to be a great leader, you have to be somebody that creates followership. And you can kind of see that even in a restaurant, in an individual restaurant, you can kind of see, if I look at the hourly team members, whether it's front of house or back of house, you can see who's the, unofficial leader in the group. You can see who's got that sort of personal leadership and professional maturity, and the person that's helping new folks. And, it's not the person that's going like, well, these are my tables and that's all I'm doing, or this is my job description and that's all I'm doing. And same in the back of house, it's a different energy behind the line. But you can see who, I don't even know what the right word is, but I can see Sam nodding, so I know that he knows what I mean. It's like they just kind of have this X factor, and you can tell that they've got some kind of foundational personal leadership, because you can teach people to be great leaders. There's that argument, are teachers born or made? And that's another podcast as well. But you do have to have some fundamental interpersonal skills, I think, to be able to be taught some of the tools of the trade for leadership. So, we're always looking at who are the people that are putting their hand up to be a trainer, who are the people that are putting their hand up to be what we call a culinary professional or a service professional, which is almost like the next step in your career. We have regular, what we call open call sessions with our management teams to say, this is what being a manager is like. Here's a day in a life, so that people can see if it's for them. And we know actually that through doing this, we get more women and more minorities into management, because I don't like to stereotype, but typically they might not be as forthright as saying, I'd like to try that. So we do create forums for people to come and hear about what a career in management looks like. But I really have always believed that if somebody's got great interpersonal skills, they work hard, and they've got good learning agility, the sky's the limit in this industry.
Do you need them to come to you, or do you spot them, or is it a mix?
It's a mix. And each of our brands, I have HR teams in each of our brands, and they are responsible for building their talent pipeline, because, we obviously are opening 60 to 70 restaurants a year, new restaurants a year. So as well as recruiting for turnover within our existing restaurants, we have to make sure that we're, 10 steps ahead of new restaurant openings. So my HR teams in each of the 10 brands are responsible for building a talent pipeline within their brand, so that we don't have to slow down our growth because we don't have enough people. So most of the time, it's a two-way street. Sometimes we will approach people who maybe haven't put their hand up, and the local leaders like, I think this person's got more potential. But again, we create a lot more forums for people to understand what it means to grow your career, and it's much more structured than when I got here. It was a little loosey-goosey when I got here. Bit of good luck and hope that somebody picks up the phone and calls someone. So you need to have in a business our big, we have to have some structure.
Sam, I'd love to hear your take on how have you been spotting great internal leadership talent lately?
Yeah, I totally appreciated Sarah's framing of this. There is an intangible. You can teach the X's and O's, but you can't teach the spirit. And it's hard to pinpoint, but when you see it, you know it. And there are forums that allow for people who have that positive spirit. And it goes back to the basics of teamwork is about helping someone who is not in your station. Being a good leader is rising tides and making sure your teammates shine when something goes well, and taking accountability and responsibility when things go poorly. And there's a lot of these elements that you see. If there's finger pointing, that's not a leader. That's someone that's lacking that maturity that's required. If you're seeing accountability, learning from mistakes are great if you learn from them. And we keep a very close eye on the teams, front of house and back of house, to see who are demonstrating these qualities, who's taking accountability, who's stepping up and training without being asked to train, who's coming up with innovative ideas on how we can do things better. You know, who knows the bar better than the bartenders? Who knows the consumer behavior better than the servers or the bussers who are clearing the table and seeing the same dish that they keep throwing away? Highlight that. That can end up saving food costs. That can make the experience better. You can't teach these things, but you encourage with your existing leaders to have an open forum for debate, feedback, leadership. Encourage it for those who may not be as extroverted, to realize that there are different forums and different channels for you to provide your feedback and demonstrate that you care about your entity and you care about your team and you want to be a good team player. Really, really critical. But it's always, you know, I joke around, and Jeremy, you're the expert. Hiring is the most challenging thing. You could have the perfect resume. You could come in and be an Academy Award winning interviewee by interviewing better than anyone, and it's still 50-50, whether it works out or not. But you know what's not is hiring the 51%, which is the positive spirit, versus the 49%. That you can see within 30 seconds who has it and who doesn't. If you surround yourself with that energy and that spirit, a lot of the other stuff you can teach.
Yeah, it's like the hard skills are the things that we want and they need to have on paper, but the soft skills is something you just can't teach someone to care. You can't teach them to be a team player.
No, and things like empathy, these are things that are innate. And
Right.
this day and age, I feel like a generation that's growing up on the screen and living half of their time virtually through technology truly miss out on those interpersonal skills and the humanity that's needed to be a functioning citizen of, you know, society and a contributing member of society, which is where, again, I think the academia is really interesting, to get in a room and have a debate without letting ChatGPT break down the points nicely for me is really what the world needs more of. And we provide that forum, which is really beautiful, thinking about where the world is headed, you know, in the coming years. It's this marriage of academia and hospitality that I think is actually giving this elixir that the world needs more of versus less of, because ChatGPT is a lot more eloquent than I am with the questions of this podcast. I can tell you that.
For an hourly standpoint, I just thought of this question from what we're talking about for hourly, like servers or bartenders or frontline that are applying. Would you say it's important if they don't have much on their resume, right? if that, would you say it's important, Sarah and Sam, to have activities that they are involved in to show the social aspect? Because most people are on their screens. So if you see, hey, they're involved in this meeting or this sport or is a team, do you feel that that's valuable?
I mean, definitely team, right? Whether it's sports or whether it's playing, in a band or being part of a community group. I think that restaurants, those are small spaces with a lot of people jammed into them for a concentrated period of time. And there's a lot of things that can go wrong when you have a bunch of human beings in that kind of environment.
Right.
It can be a bit of a pressure cooker. And so I think that people that have, that we can see have had some exposure to some kind of team or group activity, whatever it is, organization, it just, it's a big deal for us. We assess for it. We assess for people's teamwork, because as Sam will know well, as everybody knows well on this podcast, you have one bad apple and it can just spoil the bunch. And then that's just a distraction, and it takes away from focusing on the guests because you've got to deal with all that. And so that teamwork piece, I think, is really critical in such a close environment.
I love it because, and Sam, I just find you so interesting, because I always tell my finance majors and accounting majors and IT majors, if you have the ability to deal with people, why are you not shying away from a hospitality company? And I won't throw him under the bus, but I have this issue right now with my spouse. He's an IT master's, right? And I'm like, go work for a hospitality company, because your Marriott experience is what made you a superstar. So I think a finance major is focused on getting that job at JP Morgan. A person who loves being a server at Darden and really wants to stay in there might be reaching out to Sarah's development team for the next spot in a restaurant. Think about what your skill sets are, and remember that restaurant, hotel, airline, cruise line, casino, you name it, we are businesses, period, with bottom lines. And so look at your chef who left being a superstar chef to go work in IT. I think that's the best example I've heard since the start of the year. And I mean, probably at home, there were a lot of questions like, what are you going to do? Who's going to cook in the house? I can just imagine the funny conversations. So I had to throw that out there, because we all get siloed in what we think we're good at and what we are going to do forever. And shouldn't be that way.
Well put.
We're actually coming up to an hour, but I have two questions I just want to ask. I want to be respectful of your times, because you guys are very, very, very busy people. But I definitely want to ask two things. So the first one is, everyone talks about culture, company culture, but in your experience, what are the real signals that tell you culture is actually healthy in your restaurants and not just fluff?
How you're greeted at the door. Let's start there. I had this conversation with our team earlier. I said, look, the hosts are critical, because they're welcoming our guests into our home. And if you're welcome with a smile and warmth, that sets the tone. It also sets the tone for the exit. That, do you say goodbye? And I always equate it to, what do you do when you have guests in your home? You don't just open the door and let them walk in. You greet them. You don't just let them walk out. And how many restaurants have you gone to where your meal concludes and you've had a beautiful experience, but then you walk out and no one even acknowledges you? You're like, I just dropped a ton of money and supported you. Yet ones that actually do acknowledge you and make it personal, it feels like going and having a dining experience, being a house guest. And I always view culture starts with the host, and it starts with the spirit of the servers. And you can walk into any restaurant, you see servers who are glowing, they're smiling, it's theater if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to the hiring question, I love my experience on Wall Street. It gave me, yes, the blocking and tackling skills, but it taught me about how to be a professional. And it taught me about the little soft skills. And when you see that spirit's in the right place and they have the talent, it hatches and unlocks culture where you don't need to look as far as everyone's like, oh, it's experiential dining. It's about the guest. What's the design, the food, the service, and that culture of a company will actually shine onto the guest. It's as critical as any.
And I would just add to that, I think that's a wonderful answer. And I think from a people perspective, one of the things that we look at, one of the questions in our engagement survey is, I would recommend this as a great place to work. And especially in the restaurants, when somebody recommends their friends or their family to come and work with them, I think that's one of the greatest compliments you could get, because I've certainly worked in some places in my life where I'm like, no, I don't think I would want anybody I know working here. And so I think that's the greatest. It's like a net promoter score, right? It's to us, that's the greatest compliment, that they want the people closest to them in their lives to come and work for where they work.
Perfect. My last question right here. Looking forward or looking ahead in 2026, what do you think will clearly separate the brands that are thriving from the ones that are just hanging on?
Go for it, Sam.
Yeah, no, I think about this all the time. Heading into this year, as I started this conversation, brands that embrace simplicity with core values that are intentional will win. And I really do think this is a year where experiential dining, and someone asked the question earlier, one of the listeners, experiential dining is key, but knowing what you stand for is critical, and making sure that from an experience standpoint, you're hitting on all the pillars. We've talked about culinary excellence is our North Star. Service and that cultural element is critical. Design is actually really important in restaurants, and becoming even more so, because restaurants are an escape. And it is becoming one of the few places in the world that truly allow us to get away from this technology-driven world we live in. And things like the food, the service, the design, when it all comes together with the right lighting and the right music, simplifying that and being intentional about it in restaurants is really, really important to know. Ultimately, that experience that you deliver is rooted in intentionality versus being an afterthought. I think heading into 26, consumer tastes are changing, and we've hit on a lot of these topics, but that is a really, really important element of, again, rooted in simplicity. Where's my food coming from? Did they serve it to me with intentionality? Did they think through the little details here? Simplify your menus. These elements coming together make for, a wonderful experience that in 26 will separate the haves from the have-nots.
Sarah, anything you'd like to add?
I don't know how I can top that. Excellent. That was an excellent answer. And I think, there's a lot of talk about AI and social media and all the things that didn't exist 20, 30 years ago. But at the end of the day, as Sam mentioned, people come into restaurants for an escape of some kind. And so I think, adding to what he said, brands that understand who their guest is and what their guest is looking for, I think is even more critical, because there's so many options out there. And knowing what your value proposition is for your guest. And I say that from the perspective of, having 10 brands, we have different target guests, and being consistent. You have to be consistent, because there's just too many other options out there. If people don't like the experience, they just won't come back.
Yeah, without a doubt. I could talk to both of you guys for a long time. Oh, wow. We have a Darden team member on there. I love it. Very inspired. See, Sarah?
Yeah, that's amazing. Email me. sking@darden.com.
Love it. Yeah, the two of you I could talk to forever. Sam, you really need to get in front of some parents. There's an initiative with the National Restaurant Association and the American Hotel Lodging Association to infuse curriculum into the high schools, like Sarah said, was very common elsewhere in the world, right? So in Florida, we have the highest number of ProStart curriculum. ProStart is the NRA, the National Restaurants Curriculum. And we also have about 50 or 60 HTMP, which is the curriculum from hotels. And the problem is not that they don't love the classes. They usually opt into them, because who would not rather cook for 2 hours than study Socrates? Or that's probably a bad example, but I'm going to throw it out there. But then we can't get them converted into the business. It's like, it's a fun thing while you're in high school, and did you continue on? Because the parents are like, I want you to be a doctor. I want you to be an accountant. I want you to make a lot of money because mommy and daddy didn't get there. So we need more in front of the parents, and we need good PR. I don't know. And soft skills, you mentioned earlier, that's our number one thing in every business college in America that comes out. What could you improve on? Soft skills. And I don't know how to teach that. I call it the spirit to serve, the spirit of hospitality. When I see it, I know it. But I don't have a test for it at CVS yet.
There is a test, and maybe on another podcast I'll share it with you. It was something that I had to go through at H&M when they did interviews. It was like this whole entertaining physical interview, but you can see a lot of soft skills in that interview. But I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Sam, for joining us today. I honestly really appreciate it. I know how busy both of you are, and you probably have a lot of meetings that you might be 5 minutes late to, so I'm sorry about that. Thank you for joining us so much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you all.
Thanks for having us.
Can't wait to see you guys in person. Thank you both.
Thank you. All right, Peter, until the next one.
Wow.
I know.
It's all about the guests. I mean, everyone we've done so far, I was in kind of a mood in the morning, and super happy, Send me the link as soon as you're ready, because I have students who wanted to listen but couldn't, and a lot of them work at Yard House and Darden Brands.
It will be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. It will be on YouTube, LinkedIn. I'll send you all the links. But I want to say thank you to everybody that listened. Thank you, Peter, and until next time, thank you very much. Thank you for listening to Check In